I learned Japanese in 4 distinct stages that literally anyone can do. Like, trust me, if I can do this, you can do this. And it's made life so much better. しかも人生が倍も良くなっただけではなく、いろんな、なんていうかな、扉の鍵になったっていうか、例えば giving me access to entire worlds like Tsugaru Shamisen and becoming the first ever foreign apprentice of the Yoshida brothers, or things like flying a plane here in Japan and learning how to do that entirely in Japanese, or even the number of amazing people that I've had the opportunity to meet and document, like Shimayama-san and rebuilding his shop. Almost none of this would have been possible without Japanese, and guaranteed none of it would have been nearly as good. 4 simple stages, we'll call them levels. Let's gamify this a little. 1, basics. 2, conversation. 3, specialized, or we'll call it useful Japanese. And 4, we'll call over 9,000. And we'll start right there because it's much easier than the internet makes it look today. There's so many resources out there that I know for some people it can feel really overwhelming, while those resources should have the opposite effect. So we'll take it down to the basics and I'll make it easy again. I'll go over those 4 steps, exactly what I did, and at the end of each one, I'll talk about what I would do today if I was starting over from zero.
ちょっとすいません。観光客が物をなくした場合どうしたらいいんですか？
警察署で届け出を出すことはできます。ホテルの名前とかを書いて、届け出を出すことはできます。
Level 1, the basics. So for me, everything started back in high school. I was in electronics class of all places, and while everybody else was trying to light up a little LED, I was trying to create a boost converter to turn a 9-volt battery into a taser. And after succeeding, my teacher was a little concerned, so followed up the next day by bringing in this, I was backwards, this right here, this little Johan Japanese English dictionary, telling me that he knew how to speak Japanese and I should learn too. He told me that if I learned hiragana within a month, that he would gift me the dictionary, and I loved the idea of the challenge, so I took him up on it. So armed with this little dictionary that came out before I was even born, I did 3 things immediately that stuck with me to this day. Number 1, I learned the basic sounds of Japanese, the a, I, u, e, o. See, YouTube was still a couple years away and there were no Japanese students at my school, but this book here has a little pronunciation guide that I was able to use to get myself started, and then I just confirmed the rest with my teacher as I went along. Step 2, I obviously learned hiragana. Now there is a chart in the book, but I wanted to get the stroke order right, so I downloaded some sheets off the internet and I would practice with those while combining it with step 1 and saying each one out loud, like ka, ki, ku, and so on. But step 3 is likely the most important step, and it's the one that definitely had the most impact. I allowed myself to become obsessed with this. I'd be sitting in the hallways or on the bus writing and verbalizing hiragana every single day, which now to think back, I probably looked a little bit crazy, but it worked. By the time I was done, after a month of doing that, I was so comfortable with every single character that I actually started working them into my notes. Like, I'd be replacing English letters in my school notes with hiragana just to practice my speed as I was writing. Like, bed would be B, E, T, and stuff like that. But that obsession allowed me to get really comfortable with it really quick. And if I was redoing this today, I'd probably do almost exactly the same thing with 2 minor changes. Number 1, I would shadow something online for those basic sounds. A, I, U, E, O. Still wouldn't learn words and whatnot yet. I would just start with that. I'd still learn hiragana, but I'd likely do more printouts or use like an iPad or something to do it more slowly and get a nicer. My writing is absolutely atrocious. You can tell I rushed learning it in that month because it is not clean whatsoever. But even today, that's how I would start. No big fancy textbooks, nothing else, just learn the basic pronunciation, make sure I've got it right, learn basic hiragana. Starting confidently with those 2 things gave me an incredible base to work with, and I feel they made everything else easier for me. By the way, comment section is an incredible place to both leave and find incredible tips that help get other people started in a strong way, since we all learn just a little bit different. We'll treat it like the take a penny, leave a penny tray.
And those basics really pay off in the long run too. Like, Sherry,
日本人から見たら発音どう？
全然日本人と変わんないよ。
電話だったらわかる？
絶対わかんない。
That brings us to level 2, conversation. Keeping everything simple from the beginning, I memorized everything as sets. I would shadow exact sentences as they were with the intonation, pronunciation, everything. 何々を食べてもいいですか? Exactly like that, again and again. Norm, where did you learn these sentences? Genius level question. Thank you so much for asking. I used 2 tools, both of which are now very old. The first being a set of audio lessons called Pimsleur's Japanese, and the second being this really old program from the Japan Foundation from the 80s called Let's Learn Japanese, Yan and the Japanese People. I obsessively watched, listened, and copied these, shadowed them every single day for a month. 1 in the morning, 1 at night. And at the end of that month, I was basically conversational is the word we were going for. It wasn't good conversation by any means, but it was conversation. And then came my biggest upgrade so far. I was in college at this point. YouTube was finally out, but at this point it was basically still just a video of a guy at a zoo. But there were Japanese students, and so I made Japanese friends. A lot of them. I also learned that not all Japanese go abroad to study English during university. Many do, but just as many go abroad for a couple years just to escape the pressures of Japanese life while still living in Japanese just overseas. And it's this group that I managed to kind of work my way into and become friends with. I inevitably spent the next few years with this group honing my Japanese skills, listening and copying absolutely everything that I could, and learned something very, very interesting along the way that I think everybody should know. And listen carefully here because it's very important. Japanese do not get offended or upset if you make a mistake in Japanese. If anything, they're quick to hand you a correction or a bit of help. Ironically, this is the time of my life where I received the most Nihongo Jozus.
and now I'm Dogen certified Jozu.
Now, if I were to be doing this section today with the plethora of tools out there, it would be daunting and overwhelming. In fact, a few years back when I was trying to brush up, okay, let's be honest, when I was trying to massively improve my Japanese for my pilot training, I came across a tool that I actually enjoy and am still enjoying to this day. I recently sent them an email thanking them and telling them I'd be mentioning them in this video, and they offered a bit of a sponsorship. Thank you for that. I'd be mentioning them either way, but full disclosure, the tool is called Bldg, and it's a multi-language tool or platform. It's everything. Of course, there's an app with all the learning and tracking and flashcards and all of the normal things that you would hope to have in a learning system like this. But there's one tool in this toolbox that I've kind of become obsessed with over the past couple years, and it's this browser extension that connects to my Bldg account and allows me to learn directly from subtitles on dramas and anime, as well as text-based blogs and everything, and create flashcards directly from that. I actually use a lot of Japanese blogs for things like aviation or searching out abandoned spots, like finding the hermit living out in the abandoned village in the mountains. And every time I'm reading one of these blogs and come across a word or phrase or term I don't know, Bldg can not only give me a quick rundown, but I can also save it to my flashcards to review and practice later. In fact, I can do the same thing with my study and test materials, a Cessna manual, even a menu for that matter. And this is why I wanted to share it, because it aligns perfectly with the being obsessed and working the Japanese into every part of my daily life. Now, of course, Bldg has their own website and their rundown and an outline of all their tools and whatnot. I will link them if you want to check them out, but that's what I've been using that helps me continue to enjoy studying Japanese even after all these years. But whether it's that tool or another one, the most important thing is that you just find something that you can enjoy using in your daily life every single day. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was when I was looking to buy my first camera. My buddy Lucas told me, as long as you're picking a reputable brand, just find a camera that you like, that you enjoy the feel of, the shutter sound, all of that, and that matches your budget, and just go out and shoot. And I feel like with the number of Japanese tools out there, it's kind of the same. If you learn from books, find a book you love. If you learn from apps and browser extensions, then go that route. Just find something that you can do every day. Shadow, shadow, shadow. And that should cover level 2. Again, comment section if you have any incredible tips for things that have worked for you at this stage. With Yota here being a perfect example, I insist on doing all of his interviews in Japanese just because of how beautifully he speaks. Do you feel that you can communicate at the same level in English and Japanese?
Try to speak deeper in English is a little bit hard for me. だから日本語で言葉選びとか、自分の言語化とかの癖とかもあるから。
I've actually stolen some of your Japanese. There are phrases that I picked up from Yota, like teku teku aruite.
テクテク歩いて。
My inadvertent Japanese teacher. Level 3, specializing or filling in the gaps. This stage is where things got fun. This is where I learned kanji, or learned to talk about music theory, or learned to deal with arguments and negotiations, or even pass difficult tests like the aviation law exam or technical radio exams. And when you put it all together like that, it might sound a little bit intimidating, but it's not. Arguably, this section is where I've had the most fun ever in my Japanese journey. For example, when I started learning how to play the Tsugaru Shamisen, I was completely unable at my first lesson or okeiko to discuss anything because I didn't know the terminology. And so the older of the two Yoshida brothers recommended I go out and get a manga called Mashiro no To. Now, after a couple days of reading this on the train, I had a friend point out to me that the cover art signifies that it's a girls' manga. Got myself a cover, kept reading, and by the time I went in for my next lesson, I was much better versed in being able to talk about these topics. Also, there's now an anime about it, which would have made things a lot easier back then. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Learning kanji, by the way, happened kind of naturally, as I made a lot of friends here in Japan who didn't speak English, so I had to text back and forth with them in Japanese every day, meaning that there were constantly kanji coming up that I didn't know, and I had to research and had to do the same when I'm sending my own messages. And after doing that daily for a year, I became much more comfortable with kanji. This does leave quite a few gaps, however. I wasn't able to read, signs and post-its, posters, notices, newspapers, any of that. All of that kind of came later. For example, when I started aviation, I could not read or understand anything. I have to do entire manuals and test booklets and everything in Japanese. And even when I started to pick up the kanji, I started realizing I don't know the phrases, the terminology. So one of the things I defaulted to was aviation dramas, which were not technical enough for me, and there's not a lot of them out there. So I jumped to Japanese blogs, and reading aviation blogs really started to give me context on not just the kanji, but how they're used in a sentence outside of a manual or a test booklet. But I also very quickly noticed that if I wasn't using them every single day, I would very quickly forget. And so that's how I came across tools like we talked about before with Migaku, where I can just incorporate it into my daily life. This section really boiled down to finding something specific to apply to whatever area of Japanese that I was lacking in and deep diving in that. All of this followed the same 3 points. Stick with the basics, shadow, listen and copy everything, and make sure it's a part of your daily life until you're comfortable with it. Those 3 things do not change through any part of this process, except for the next and final part when it changes completely. Right now, I'm out in Shikoku with my friend Ayaka. Hey, Ayaka.
Hi.
We've been working together for the last year or so to try to increase businesses in tourism and maybe even build an app to kind of interconnect some of the smaller businesses in the area. And all of that needs to be done in Japanese. で日本語喋ってる時違和感とか何か変な日本語とかって
ないよ。
あるのあるでしょ。
でも大丈夫よ。日本人で日本語できるやつっていっぱいあるから。
And that brings us to level 4. We're going over 9,000. There is almost not a single situation that you could throw me in Japanese that I would not be able to handle with the same comfort that I could handle it in English. The key word being comfort, not skill. They're different. I had this friend back in Canada. He was Chinese, could barely speak English, but the confidence he would go into things with. I remember he came up to me one day. I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And he's like, "Oh no, so me, this one, this." I'm like, "Oh, you broke up with your girlfriend? Are you okay?" No, okay. You, me, beer. I'm like, "You want to get it? Yeah, let's get a drink, man. Let's talk." And I never felt stressed talking with him. I had Japanese friends by contrast who they really think about every little thing and their communication was great, but I felt more stressed with them. Now, I learned a lot from this, especially the value of comfort over communication skill. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't learn Japanese or don't learn it properly, but there are kind of ways around this. It's okay to get stuck and it's okay to fail. You see, the Japanese have this word called gomakasu. And gomakasu is to kind of go around something, to sidestep, to avoid. For example, one of the most common phrases is waratte gomakasu. Somebody who kind of escapes through laughter. You're like, "Hey, did you just eat that last French fry?" Like, waratte gomakasu. And I bring this up because it's a great example that not everything needs to be this perfect sentence. For example, if I can't remember how to say he fell in the ocean and drowned, 海に落ちて溺れた, I could find other ways of saying that or going around or gomakasu. For example, 彼は海に落ちて出れなくなっていなくなった. You've basically said the same thing, and amazingly, you don't even need to say that. One of the beauties of Japanese is that it's a very implied language. So you could really just say, 彼は海に落ちてもう. And the person you're talking to will either just understand that he drowned, or they may even just ask, 溺れたの? And then you're in the money because they don't even know you forgot the word, and you can go, 溺れた. Not gonna lie, I do this all the time, and chances are so do you in English or whatever your native language might be. And you do so without thinking, and you were able to get there through experience, through having enough situations where you had to go around a word that you've forgotten, and it's just become natural, second nature to you at this point. Even in the Tsugaru Shamisen world, I have watched players on stage mid-performance break a string but continue without skipping a beat, and the audience notices absolutely nothing. Because they've practiced and played enough that they're so comfortable with their instrument that they know how to just go around that and keep going. In fact, if I didn't point that out to you, you might not have even noticed that that string got broken. In fact, you might still not have. Go ahead, go back, check it out. So the key takeaway here is completely different. Is just speak. In many situations, to many people, to yourself if you must. The number of hours that I've spent talking to myself, and now that I come to think about it, the key takeaway isn't all that different. It is still just shadowing, repetition. Make it a part of your daily life. Just do so without fear. Get yourself to a place where you know that you can make mistakes and do so comfortably. Go back to that reminder that Japanese will not be offended if you make a mistake. They'll likely just offer you a helpful correction and a beautiful little Nihongo Jozu to take on your way. Most Japanese are just going to be impressed that you knocked out a clean enough greeting. So go back to those basics. Copy everything as a set. Shadow it. Make it a part of your daily life. Those principles stand across all of this. I was actually raised with English and French. Hi, I'm Canadian. We do that. And I was surrounded by French-speaking friends. Won the French award in elementary school and everything. And then 3 years later, I could not remember how to say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Why? Because I stopped using it. A language becomes a part of who you are. And Japanese is no different than any other language in that respect. If you make it a part of your daily life, you're going to learn and retain a lot more of it. But no matter what you do, make sure that you are enjoying it. To make sure that we have all of our bases covered, in a couple days, I'll go over the Tokyo Lens Explore channel and we'll do a live version of this with more detail and interactive Q&A. I'll even bring in Sherry, a native Japanese speaker who I met, ironically, through doing translation at an event here in Japan. And then we can answer any question that you might have. But I'd also like to hear what's been working for you. What tools do you like? Or adverse, what have you been struggling with? So please leave those down in the comments below. I have had a ton of fun today. If you've gotten any value from this at all, please give that like button some love. Hit subscribe, and I will see you again real soon. Fun fact, I actually started trying to record this over 2.5 hours ago, but there have been so many bikes going through. We're averaging about 1 per minute right now, and it's been so noisy. It's really fun recording in the middle of Tokyo. I'm trying to create a boom. I dropped the battery. I've also not climbed into here in so long. Kind of missed the space. I also just got an email from Migaku saying that they're going to give Tokyo Lens fans a 50% discount on their lifetime plan. The email was really cute. I wanted to screenshot it and show it, but privacy might be rude. But they gave me a little code that we can use. It's all right down there. If you want to check it out, check it out. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Best of luck on your Japanese journeys. I will see you in the comments, and we'll see you again real soon.